Good afternoon. Welcome to the next installment in Maryland Department of Planning Sustainable Growth webinar series. Today's webinar is titled Heritage Areas, a Tool for Local and Regional Planning. My name is Joe Griffiths. I'm the Director of Planning Best Practices for the Maryland Department of Planning, and we have an excellent panel for you today. This webinar is available for 1.5 AICP credits. You can log your credits by going to your AICP maintenance dashboard on the American Planning Association webpage and searching for the webinar using the number on the screen. We will also send a completion certificate to all attendees. This webinar is being recorded. We will share the slides and the webinar recording on our website. However, we need to process them for accessibility due to the DOJ's new digital accessibility requirements. So it'll take us a couple of weeks. I do ask you to please put any questions you have for the panel in the Q&A. You can find it on your toolbar as opposed to the chat. If you put it in the chat, as other chats come in, it's going to push to the top and we won't be able to find it. So please put your Q&A in the chat, and I may remind you a couple times through the course of the webinar. Also, due to Maryland state policy, third-party AI assistants are prohibited from the webinar. And attendees can enable closed captioning of this webinar using the panel at the bottom. On the screen, you'll see today's learning objectives. So following the webinar, attendees will be able to define heritage areas and how they connect to the network of heritage areas in Maryland and nationally, apply heritage area priorities to comprehensive planning, describe how heritage areas contribute to placemaking and placekeeping, and historic, cultural, and natural resource stewardship, and apply heritage area funding and networking support to local planning goal implementation. And finally, before I turn it over, I did want to mention, since this is a webinar in our Sustainable Growth series, that it is connected to Maryland's 8 planning principles. On April 8th, 2025, Governor Moore signed the new planning principles into law. You can see them all on the screen. And today's webinar, while it really contributes to all of the principles, we're really going to be focusing on the place principle. And the intent statement for the place principle is on the screen. Provide for public spaces that encourage social interaction and value cultural, historical, and natural resources. Now I'd like to turn it over to my colleague, Nell Zeal, Chief of the Office of Planning, Education, and Outreach at the Maryland Historical Trust, who will serve as the moderator for today's webinar. Welcome, Nell.
Thank you, Joe. Appreciate it. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. As Joe mentioned, my name is Nell Zeal, and I'm the Chief of the Office of Planning, Education, and Outreach for the Maryland Historical Trust, which is the state agency dedicated to preserving and interpreting the legacy of Maryland's past. We are part of the Maryland Department of Planning. The Maryland Historical Trust also staffs the Maryland Heritage Areas Program, which is an independent state and local partnership program that creates and enhances place-based experiences for visitors and residents. Joe talked about place as a sustainable growth principle. We recognize that place matters, whether you're helping to connect people to their past through historic sites or inviting them to experience local ecosystems through recreational opportunities, or teaching them about traditions such as Indigenous stewardship of land and water or maritime culture in the Chesapeake. Heritage areas help support and fund these types of activities, which in turn contribute to the livability, health, and economies of our communities. We asked to offer this webinar because it's clear, and I'm saying this as someone who reviews local comprehensive plans in Maryland, that while some jurisdictions work in close alignment with their local heritage areas, many are not aware of the ways that these entities can support local planning or the resources that they bring to the table. And if you're beaming in from out of state to join us, there's also a National Heritage Area Program, and we'll touch on that also today. And many of these ideas intersect with other types of local designation and incentive programs for heritage-based development. With that introduction, I'd like to turn it over first to my colleague, Ariane Hofstedt, who's the program director for the Maryland Heritage Areas program.
Thank you so much, Nell. I'm happy to be with all of you today. As Nell said, I am the program director for Maryland's Heritage Areas program, and I'm going to share some details of our program with you. And let me just pull up my presentation. That should hopefully be working.
Yes, looks great.
Looks great? Okay, good. If there's any problems, just let me know. Great. Well, before I provide some details on the Maryland Heritage Areas program, I wanted to just give a little overview, a general explanation of what heritage areas are. This isn't a formal statement. It's pulled from a couple of different sources, but wanted to just start with kind of a base explanation so that we are all on the same page as we move through learning about the Maryland program and also the case studies that are going to be discussed today. So heritage areas are places where historic, cultural, and natural resources combine to form cohesive, significant landscapes, offering meaningful experiences for tourists and improving quality of life for residents. Heritage areas are geographically defined by distinct boundaries, and they also typically include themes or goals that are specific to each heritage area. And those heritage areas are designated, as Nell said, both at the national level and through state programs. And many of the heritage areas are managed by nonprofits, but they all have independent management entities that help drive their work. To my knowledge, there are two statewide heritage area programs. That's Pennsylvania and our great state of Maryland. The national program is managed by the National Park Service. And I included websites to the Heritage Areas program for Maryland and Pennsylvania and also the National Park Service here. So when you're looking at these slides for reference later, you can refer to those if you'd like some more details. So benefits of heritage areas. One of the biggest benefits is financial investment and incentives around funding. This usually comes through in the form of grants, and those grants are used to protect, enhance, and share historic, cultural, and natural resources. The organizations within the heritage areas use those grants to typically create authentic experiences that are centered around highlighting places, stories, activities, or artifacts, and really the distinct character of the designated heritage areas. They all really have their own take on what they want to highlight or what they're drawing from using those assets in their areas that they want to highlight. And they want to do that to attract visitors and to also provide, enhanced quality of life for the communities and the residents. But attracting visitors, whether it's overnight or same day, is a key element behind heritage areas. And this is really all done in the spirit of boosting local economies, through the creation of these experiences that attract visitors. That helps generate state and local tax revenue. People come to the area to experience one of these unique places, and they generally need to shop, they need to eat, they need to lay their head down at night. So that contributes to tax revenue in the area. If you haven't heard this term before, it's often referred to as heritage tourism. So now I want to turn to our own program, the Maryland Heritage Areas program, and give you some more details about how we operate. One thing that I'm happy to share with all of you is that this is our 30th year of being in place. The program started in 1996. So we're very proud of the unwavering bipartisan support that has kept the program in place. And we'll talk a little bit more about impact in just a minute. But I'll start by sharing that over those last 30 years, we have certified 13 heritage areas across the state of Maryland. And 2 of our heritage areas are also national heritage areas. They can be both. So that's a very unique and interesting combination as well. We recently went through a strategic planning process, so we refined our purpose statement that you see here, and I'll share with you. The Maryland Heritage Areas Program designates, supports, and collaborates with certified heritage areas and their partners to create place-based experiences for the public. Through these efforts, the program preserves and promotes Maryland's unique stories and contributes to the well-being of local economies. A little bit about our organizational and administrative structure. As Nell mentioned, we are housed administratively within the Maryland Historical Trust that also serves as the State Historic Preservation Office. We are governed by the Maryland Heritage Areas Authority, which is an independent unit of government that operates within the Department of Planning. And that governing body is made up of 19 members. We have 9 state agencies represented, along with 10 professional and community organizations. And those professional and community organizations can include the Maryland Municipals League, the Maryland Tourism Development Board, historic preservation experts, tourism experts, and the American Association, or the Maryland Association of Counties as well. Our funding comes through the Department of Natural Resources program Open Space. Those funds come through real estate transfer taxes, and we receive up to $6 million annually for the program. And we partner locally with our 13 state certified heritage areas, which, as I said, each have their own management entities. So primary activities for our program: 1, we designate and support the statewide system of the currently 13 local state certified heritage areas. That could be added to in the future if there is a grassroots effort that is also supported by local jurisdictions. That's part of our process. We award grants to heritage-related organizations within those heritage areas and also to the heritage area management entities. And we provide technical assistance and training to heritage partners statewide. So part of the strategic planning process that we went through was to take a look at our core areas of focus. And we really came out of that recognizing the central and important role that obviously heritage plays in our communities. Yes, we are focused on tourism, but we also wanted to lift up the community enhancement and the sustainability aspects that the program supports. So we've evolved to really see the work that we do through the lens of this 3-legged stool, if you will. So a little bit about program impact. As I said, we've been around since 1996. We have awarded more than $74 million in grants to hundreds of organizations since that time. Our grants do require a 1-to-1 match. So we have generated over $175 million in non-state matching funds. And that has helped to create and enhance the place-based experiences for visitors and residents across all of those heritage areas. In 2020, we did an economic impact study, and that reported that Maryland heritage areas helped generate more than 33,000 jobs, more than $319 million in annual state and local tax revenue, and more than 20 million visitors to the state of Maryland. So a little bit more about the heritage areas themselves. They do exist in all 23 counties and the city of Baltimore. They occupy approximately 30% of land in the state of Maryland. And as I said, they have their own management entities with their own staff and boards. and most of them are nonprofits. Some of them are tucked into counties or the Chamber of Commerce, but the majority that we see are independent nonprofits. And each does have its own distinct character and theme. Here is a map that shows you that the location of the heritage areas are sprawling. A lot of them are contiguous. Some of them are non-contiguous. They do not occupy every square foot of every county, but instead portions of counties. We did have one heritage area that went statewide, or I'm sorry, countywide last year, and that was Prince George's County, the Anacostia Trails heritage area. And this slide just gives you a look at each of the logos of the heritage areas, and I think speaks to, the different character, personalities, and kind of distinctive items that they like to highlight or lift up to define their different areas. So I wanted to speak a little bit more about the heritage area management entities themselves. I think, particularly to get an idea of how they can serve as a partner, how they help their communities. They do a wide range of things, and often because they are their own nonprofit organization, their mission can go beyond just the traditional heritage tourism. But I like to think about the work that they do in these sort of three buckets, serving as a catalyst, a convener, and a communicator. As a catalyst, they really provide and help coordinate funding opportunities at the state and local level. This can be assisting applicants with preparing submissions to our state level grant program, but the heritage areas themselves also administer a mini grant program in each of their local areas. The heritage areas as a whole, they come together as a coalition and they help advocate for funding for the larger program. They also bring important projects, issues, resources related to planning and heritage, to the forefront. And we're going to hear more from Gail and Carla later, an example related to solar farms. So I think, we really illustrate that. As a convener, they bring together partners, organizations, with people, with common goals that really recognize the value and the importance of protecting local heritage resources. They can provide introductions and help connect you with expertise. And they can bring stakeholders together to really collaborate on projects. This could be something as small as helping an organization find a historian that they might need to help write text for an interpretive panel or a brochure. Or it could be a larger issue, and they're making sure that developers and planners and local jurisdictions are at the same table, discussing the impacts of a project that might be touching on cultural or natural resources or comprehensive plans. And I think we're going to hear more about that, or an example of that, a case study, in just a little bit. As a communicator, they really help to share a lot of useful information, and they organize training opportunities. This is done through newsletters, websites, grant workshops, interpretive information sessions. They're looking for ways to really help support and strengthen the partners that are in their area and make sure that they have the most up-to-date information to be able to really provide really high-class, wonderful experiences. They help promote those experiences, from the tourism industry, working closely in partnership with their destination marketing organizations and through their own websites and their own, promotional vehicles. And they provide communities and planners with heritage-related information. This is, something that they do to help really inform development of local planning and ensure proper stewardship of state assets. An example might be providing an inventory of resources in the heritage area, a list of historic sites, or providing more detailed input on how a proposed development could possibly be affecting a special area or specific community within the heritage area. So I wanted to also provide some more information about the project grants that we give out at the state level. We provide approximately $3 million in capital and non-capital projects, and we have a one deadline a year timeline that opens up in December, and applications are generally due in March. And I believe that my time is running out, so I'm going to just skim over this quickly. Projects are evaluated by both local and state reviewers, and they help to enhance and preserve and make accessible to the public, support equitable, robust, and sustainable economies, connect and enrich communities, and expand and strengthen partnerships. And this information will be available when the follow-up is sent, but here's a little bit more detail on what capital projects, which can be up to a $100,000 ask, and non-capital projects, which can be up to a $50,000 ask, include in terms of what we fund. Ending with our vision statement and contact information. And more information on those details can be found on our website. So thank you.
Thank you, Ariane. So Ariane's provided a great overview, the framework of the Heritage Areas program here in the state. We'd like to turn now to some case studies and local experiences. And first up is Daphne Daly, AICP. Daphne is the Deputy Director of the Carroll County Department of Planning and Land Management, and she has served in a variety of capacities with the Heart of Civil War Heritage Area, currently on their advisory council. Daphne, welcome.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here talking to everybody about the Heart of the Civil War Heritage Area. I do just want to confirm if my screen is sharing my presentation at this point.
Looks
great.
Yep.
Okay, good. Thank you. So the as Nell said, I have served on the Heart of the Civil War Heritage Area in a lot of different capacities. I was originally in the on the steering committee as we were forming the Heritage Area back in the early 2000s, and now I serve on the advisory council. So let me tell you a little bit about the Heart of the Civil War Heritage Area. It's a 3-county initiative that encompasses Carroll, Frederick, and Washington counties, so central to sort of western Maryland, and it was established in 2006. And the main thing about this heritage area is that it really stands at the crossroads of the past, present, and future, and encompasses a whole lot of locally and nationally significant historic sites, really vibrant towns and cities, superb natural landscapes and cultural traditions that span generations, but also embrace the newest members of the community. But I don't want you to be mistaken that the Heart of the Civil War Heritage Area is stuck in the 1860s. People who experience all this area has to offer, whether they're drawn to the battlefields and historical markers or not, experience a place that, yes, has been indelibly marked by the conflict that tore this nation apart, but also a place where people can be challenged to reconcile that difficult past with an incredibly exciting present and future to commemorate and celebrate simultaneously. And this is what makes here this heritage area so special, and why so many people have it etched in their hearts. Before sharing some of the fantastic placemaking and placekeeping that's taking place in our heritage area, I just want to take a minute to break open this question of why here is important, especially in terms of heritage areas. And I want to start with the fact that a sense of place can mean a lot of things to a lot of different people, depending on who you ask. But at its core, I think, is a feeling that a particular place holds something really unique, authentic, and irreplaceable. So it might be just a general vibe or an experience or a relevance in time that really can't be replicated or found anywhere else. And heritage areas play a really special role in preserving, communicating, and enhancing that sense of place. They give people the ability to be in a space unlike any other anywhere else. A place that speaks to historic events that only happened there. Built environments that can be awe-inspiring or really humble, but they only exist in that one place. They're places where community celebrations and traditions are found that you can't find elsewhere. And they're also the place where everyday memories are made and sometimes recalled. In terms of the planning principle of place, which Joe mentioned at the outset, this planning principle speaks to providing public spaces that encourage social interaction and value cultural, historical, and natural resources. So as he mentioned, it encapsulates not just placemaking, but also placekeeping, caring for and maintaining the places that are special to the people who live and work around them, and support local ways of life and cultural memories. And I just want to kind of keep digging into this a little bit, because I think it's really important to recognize that all of the different heritage areas in the state approach this notion of placemaking and placekeeping a little differently. But we're mostly talking about the places that are most special to people because they're able to connect with them on a personal level. So this is places where people can identify threads of their own stories that are knitted into the fabric of other people, places, and events. And this creates a sense of belonging, belonging to a story that's essential not only for building a stewardship ethic for places, and you'll see a lot of that stewardship ethic in the examples that we share today, but belonging has also been defined as a fundamental human need, or the feeling of deep connection with social groups, physical places, and individual and collective experiences. Belonging is something that the U.S. Surgeon General Vivek Murthy described in 2023 as a necessary antidote to our epidemic of loneliness that much of society is experiencing today. So heritage landscapes, places, and events give us the unparalleled opportunity to connect with people and events across space and time, and at the same time to connect with each other in the here and now. They give us the framework for experiencing authentic interaction with each other and our world in real time, and in spaces that welcome all and encourage everyone to find a bit of themselves in the experience, or to really feel like they belong. Now I'm going to shift gears and talk specifically about the heart of the Civil War heritage area. And I start by saying that we know that heritage tourism is one of the most lucrative sectors of tourism, and you just heard Ariane talk a little bit about that from the state level. Heritage tourists tend to stay longer, spend more, and seek out authentic experiences found in smaller, more local establishments. And this is a huge reason why here and the placemaking and placekeeping needed for it is so important. When people seek out these authentic experiences, they tour the local historic sites, shop at the local stores, eat in the local restaurants, etc. They're infusing the local economy with critical dollars that contribute to essential services, healthy communities, and a good quality of life. And a 2021 study estimated that the contribution of the Heart of the Civil War heritage area to the statewide economy was about $450 million, supporting over 6,000 jobs. So essentially, retaining and enhancing your unique sense of place is good for everyone. We also have to recognize, though, that the heritage tourism sector is constantly evolving. It's drawing in people from different generations, cultures, and interests today than it was 10 or 20 years ago. So what's relevant or inspiring about a place is constantly shifting as the audience evolves. In the Heart of the Civil War heritage area, we've seen that the expansive and inclusive set of themes and sub-themes that we developed 20 years ago have allowed for the story of this place to be told and experienced in ways that everyone can relate to. You can see those themes here on the slide, and I just want to highlight a couple of the sub-themes within these that speak especially to place. So in the theme Maryland as a borderland, we have sub-themes that include geographic borders, cultural divisions, and tense communities. The theme of Maryland as a war zone explores Maryland's pivotal location, occupied towns and countryside, and mercy and healing. And the aftermath theme includes sub-themes like the newness of freedom, changed economies, commemoration, caring for the dead, preserving sacred places, and war alumni. And I should pause here for a second because I see in the chat that we have some people who are not from the US and other people who are not from the East Coast. Just to contextualize this, the Civil War was fought in the United States in the 1860s. It divided our country, mostly north and south, and Maryland was kind of right at the dividing line there. So a lot of these themes speak to the fact that we were really caught in the midst of a whole lot of back and forth between different parts of our country. And there are lots of ways that people have been able to take those themes and interpret them and share them with the public. So the projects I'm going to tell you about now support at least one and often many of these themes. But they're not the only lens through which the power of place is experienced in the heritage area. There are so many natural, recreational, cultural, scenic, and historic places and events, as well as outstanding local businesses and visitor services that collectively define what makes here important. And this is why heritage areas have such tremendous value. So through the Maryland Heritage Areas Authority, all three Heart of the Civil War Heritage Area counties have achieved noticeable placemaking and placekeeping accomplishments. I'm going to use my remaining time to highlight just a few of them. And I should say that none of these projects would have been possible without the financial support of the Maryland Heritage Areas Authority, private donors, and remarkable partners throughout the heritage area. So first up is the preservation of two buildings pivotal to the Middletown historic streetscape. If anyone has been to Middletown in Frederick County, you know it's a really charming small town with a very intact Main Street. Between 2018 and 2021, Middletown Main Street Incorporated was able to leverage funding through the Maryland Heritage Areas Authority to acquire, stabilize, and renovate two prominent buildings on Main Street that were at risk of being sold and possibly demolished. In 2024, they used a mini grant through the Heart of the Civil War Heritage Area to create interpretive signage and captioning for videos that are part of this new welcome center that they installed in one of the buildings that they were able to renovate. So as a result, these buildings now help to maintain the lovely historic streetscape in Middletown. And as an added bonus, the project not only helps to keep this super cute Main Street area intact, but also provides really great visitor services and interpretation as well. Next, I want to talk about the Catoctin Furnace Village and Historic District. So the Catoctin Furnace Historical Society has received numerous grants through the Maryland Heritage Areas Authority and the Heart of the Civil War Heritage Area to research, restore, and interpret the history of Catoctin Furnace Village and Historic District. It was here that an early American community of enslaved and free African American laborers grew up around Catoctin Iron Furnace, but this had until recently sort of been lost to time. One of the most exciting aspects of the work the Heritage Area has supported has been the research and analysis of DNA from 27 individuals buried at the site to identify a descendant community of over 4,000 people living today, many of whom still live in the region. Various grants from the Heritage Areas Authority and the Heart of the Civil War Heritage Area have been leveraged with funding from federal, state, and local agencies, private philanthropies, and donors to conduct research, develop and install exhibits, stabilize and restore buildings, and create a museum of the ironworker. Combined, these efforts have made remarkable achievements toward making accessible to today's visitors the stories and experiences of enslaved people who lived generations ago. And the fact that this place not only remains, but people can stand on the same ground and see and touch what others saw and felt over 200 years ago, truly speaks to the power of place and the importance of protecting and planning around it. Lastly, I want to highlight a few additional projects a little closer to where I'm located in Carroll County. So these are two projects in the city of Westminster. One of them is Ellsworth Cemetery, which is a historic African-American cemetery that had fallen into neglect and been vandalized over the years since it was founded in the late 1870s. It's the final resting place of many of Carroll County's African-American residents, including several Black Civil War veterans who actually helped establish the cemetery. Its location, which was once quite removed from the city limits, its history and the stories of those interred there are the context within which you experience this special place. Many people are working to ensure that the sacred site is maintained and additional research on its significance is conducted. Efforts supported in recent years by the Maryland Historical Trust, the Community Foundation of Carroll County, the Knights of Columbus, as well as the Heart of the Civil War Heritage Area, are helping to ensure that people know about Ellsworth Cemetery, appreciate the many ways it contributes to the unique history of Westminster, and become invested in caring for its protection. Another Westminster site that's seen significant investment is the historic Durbin House, which is a pre-Revolutionary War stone house built in 1767 that's now owned by the city of Westminster. The house at one point served as the clubhouse for a private golf club, but it fell into disrepair after the property was foreclosed on in 2012. In 2020, the city of Westminster became the owner of much of the golf course property, turning it into a park and embarking on a major effort to convert the site into a treasured public space. The landscape is being converted to natural areas and ponds are being restored as biodiverse habitats. Former cart paths are being transformed into 4.5 miles of walking trails, and the historic Durbin House has been fully restored and will now serve as a visitor and interpretive center next door to a large event space. Significant funding support from the Heritage Area Program, the city, and other partners has transformed a once private recreational facility into a publicly accessible amenity that not only creates a very real sense of place today, but has nestled within it a fabulous historic resource that connects the present to the past and grounds this place in an ongoing story of how we use and care for our land and the built environment. Lastly, I don't want to forget to mention the Heart of the Civil War Heritage Area's US 250th Geo Tour Passport, which just this morning received a Maryland Preservation Award for Excellence in Public Programming and Exhibits. This fun adventure takes participants to 15 geocaches located at historic sites throughout the 3-county heritage area. It provides an engaging way for residents and visitors to explore the heritage area and establish visual and experiential memories of the rich diversity, deep history, and tremendous resources that make this place like no other in the world. Our hope is that experiencing these places, driving the back roads, visiting our historic sites, listening to the stories, talking to local business owners, and taking in the scenery conveys a distinct sense of place, a place where people feel welcome and connected, and a place that people care about and care for long into the future. I hope that some of the projects I've shared here give you an idea of how pivotal the Heart of the Civil War heritage area has been in protecting and sharing what makes this place so special. Thanks.
Thank you, Daphne, and congratulations to Heart of the Civil War Heritage Area for that award. I'm very pleased to give them that today, and encourage everyone to check that out, especially if you enjoy geocaching. We are going to turn now to the Eastern Shore, Maryland's Eastern Shore, and we'll hear first from one of our Heritage Area directors, who is also a planner. I'm pleased to introduce Gail Owings, who's the Executive Director of Stories of the Chesapeake Heritage Area. Take it away, Gail.
Good afternoon. I would like to confirm that everyone can see my slides.
Yep.
Great.
You look great.
I am so excited to be here. I am Gail from the Stories of the Chesapeake. We are a very large heritage area. If you think back to the map that you saw on Ariane's, we are the large brown spot on the Eastern Shore. And if you're not familiar with Maryland or Maryland's Eastern Shore, that means we are on the east side of the Chesapeake Bay. We are on the other side of the big Chesapeake Bay Bridge. And if you look at a night sky map of the East Coast of the United States, we are the dark spot in that when you see that map. We consist of 4 counties, 21 municipalities, over 1,200 square miles, a host of unincorporated towns. We are one of the oldest working landscapes in North America, and we have a variety of stories to tell. I'm not going to read our mission because you can read it, but when we were forming the Stories of the Chesapeake Heritage Area, and I've been involved with the Stories of the Chesapeake Heritage Area, I guess now we're almost going on 30 years, with the beginning in 1999 as a board member and a founder. We recognized the importance of stewardship, and we recognized the importance of collaboration with our local governments. And in doing that, when our board was developed, because we are a local nonprofit, when our board was developed, each of our 4 counties gets to appoint 2 members on our board. One of them is automatically the tourism director. The other one is appointed by our local elected officials. Typically, those appointees have been planning directors or representatives from the planning offices. That allows us to closely collaborate on all of our stewardship goals and to make sure that we are walking in step with the counties and supporting what the counties need. We just finished a 5-year strategic plan that identified some overarching stewardship priorities. One is to promote the sustainable conservation of cultural landscapes. And we do that both with the counties, with the help from the state, and many of our other local nonprofits in the region, such as our land trust and our river keepers, to advance the preservation of historic and prehistoric resources, to facilitate the conservation of living traditions, such as racing sailboats that used to work the bay, and to protect and enhance the environment. We feel as a heritage area, we provide a wide variety of resources for our partners, including the counties. We conduct workshops. They can be grant writing workshops. We've done workshops on resiliencies. We hosted a climate change workshops. We've hosted accessibility workshops, a variety of workshops to help our partners increase their capacity and make their projects happen. We provide technical assistance. One of the most important things we do, and you'll hear a little bit more about this, is we amplify the voice of all of our partners, including our local governments. We act as an information clearinghouse. We are the portal to get to the Maryland Heritage Area Authority grants, and we also provide our own grants. And just recently in our 5-year plan, and as a result of this meeting, we've talked about doing some style guides and better models for development, not somewhat similar to those better models that were completed years and years ago by Scenic America. I'm just going to give a couple of examples of what we've been able to do. When the town of Federalsburg, which is a very small town on the Eastern Shore, came to us saying they would like to have a National Register district, we ended up working very, very closely with them. Our first step was to sit down and we looked and reviewed their assets and worked with the Maryland Historical Trust to see if they had the proper place and asset to become a National Register district. Then we provided technical assistance to help them find the consultants necessary to fill out the application. We provided a small grant to help pay for the completion of that National Register nomination. Wonderfully, that National Register nomination was accepted and approved. So then we worked with the town to meet with the community to say, you're a National Heritage National Register district. Isn't this wonderful? What are the benefits? And one of the benefits of being in that National Register district is it gives their property owners access to both the Maryland and the federal historic tax credits. So working with Preservation Maryland and others, we held a historic preservation tax credit workshop in the town of Federalsburg. About 50 people from a town of less than 2,000 attended this tax credit workshop. We replicated that tax credit workshop in every one of our other 4 counties, but the one in Federalsburg was particularly important because it let property owners and residents of the town know that there was a huge benefit from becoming a National Register district. And then we've also provided interpretation and restoration grants on projects such as this Chambers Cabin, which is a WPA project from the 30s that's in one of the parks in Federalsburg. So that's one example on how the heritage area can work very closely with a small town and a local government to accomplish great things. We provided technical assistance on a couple of other projects. Rock Hall Main Street. Rock Hall is another very small town of about 1,500 people located in Kent County. They are a Main Street affiliate, and they were undergoing a facade restoration program. We assisted the town of Rock Hall with writing the grant for the facade restoration program, and we also served on the committee to review and work with the property owners with their facade restoration. As a part of our role as stewards, we review comprehensive plans, but luckily we have been able to serve on several of the county comprehensive plan committees. In Queen Anne's County, we were on the tourism and historic preservation subcommittee that helped write the information that went into their that section of their brand new comprehensive plan. I think a lot of people are going to be really interested in this. We we're set up to be reviewers for Section 106. The PPRP, which is the Power Plant, I want to say relocating program of DNR, and that is the committee that reviews things such as the large solar panel initiations, new transfer stations, power line improvements, all of those programs that could possibly have an impact on our cultural landscape. And we also participate in the clearinghouse review. The Section 106 is the national review for projects. The different agencies and different ones that we've worked with, and I want to give out a huge, huge call to the Maryland State Highway Administration, because their communication with us on projects and letting us know when they have projects, both major projects such as the Bay Bridge replacement or minor projects, which may be a culvert project, they contact us on just about everything to make sure we don't have a comment and to see if there needs to be any mitigation or what needs to happen to be consistent with our plans. We work with them with road construction and improvements and trails. For the PPRP, it's solar panel and other energy projects, power lines, telephone lines. And Section 106, that would be the reviews that we do with comprehensive plans and other planning products, and as well as projects. What we don't do, all of our review and input is at a big picture level, except with the PPRP reviews. We do not get involved in small subdivisions, site plan, Board of Appeals. We don't get involved in those projects. If we did get involved in those projects, we'd be going down a rabbit hole. And all of our local government programs do a great job reviewing those projects. We feel like we help amplify the local voice. With the State Highway Section 106 review, for example, where we've been able to amplify their voice. If you've ever been to St. Michael's, Maryland, which is a lovely small town here on the Eastern Shore, you may not notice, but their curbs are actually made of the main street, are actually made of marble. State Highways was doing some downtown road improvements, and the town came to us and they said, can you help us? We want to make sure that our curbs remain to be marble, because that is part of our sense of place. That is, it's a small section, but it is something that's important. And the town said that they would pay for it. And we were there to amplify their concerns to make sure that that placemaking element remained the same. With working with Queen Anne's County, for those of you not in this area, for the last, I'm going to say 30 or 40 years, there's been concern on how do we replace the existing bay bridges. Most recently, the Federal Highway Administration just completed a bay bridge recommendation, and it's going under the NEPA study. We have been active participants in that NEPA review, providing information on resources that are in the area, comments, and again, amplifying the local government's voice. Concerns that we hear from the Queen Anne's County local government and Queen Anne's County residents, we make sure that in our comments, we are amplifying their voice and making sure that their comments are strengthened. When we get to the PPRP review, the intrinsic qualities of our heritage area, and we have 2 All-American roads, which the All-American Road is the most prestigious designation in the National Scenic Byway System. Both of our heritage areas and Chesapeake Country and the Underground Railroad, All-American Road, rely heavily on the wide expanse of farmland, landscapes teeming with rich soils and wildlife. And that is an important part of our cultural landscape is this wide open landscape you see as you drive along our roads. So when we get these PPRP reviews, we go in, and luckily the board a few years ago created a scenic and cultural assessment. We hired a consulting company that went in and reviewed the whole heritage area, assessing both the scenic qualities and the cultural qualities of the heritage area. And I will get to that. We use the information in this assessment to formulate our comments back on each of these projects. We look at the landscaping that is being proposed for each of these projects. And if it's in a particularly sensitive area, we may make some suggestions on doing something that may be a little different, or making suggestions to make sure that the landscaping actually reflects the quality and type and variety of plants that are indigenous to our area. And then we also work very, very closely with each of our local governments to see what their suggestions may be on these projects, and work with them to amplify any concerns, any mitigation, or on the other hand, if they think it's a great idea and an appropriate spot that everyone agrees, that amplify that we agree that that is. So we amplify the local government's voice. So our scenic and cultural assessment is such a large portion of our review. This cultural assessment divides the heritage area into a number of landscape districts. That then takes each of these landscape districts and looks at the resources that are characteristic in each heritage area, in our heritage area, and resources that are significant to the understanding and appreciation of our natural cultural heritage. So the scenic resource, it looks at the magnitude of the scenic resource. Is it distinctive? Is it intact? As a part of the scenic assessment, there was a survey that went to a large number of public meetings and at different festivals, and that asked what the preference was of both visitors and citizens. What is their preference? Do they like looking at water? Are they looking at landscapes? What do they like looking at farmland? And so it takes those preferences and ranks each of the landscape difference on against those landscapes. And it also talks about what representative resources are available there. It also looks at the cultural assessment. That's a cultural assessment. And it takes the themes from our management plan and assesses each of the landscape district for natural resources, colonial early history, peopling the land, religious heritage, African American heritage, agricultural heritage, maritime heritage, and travel and tourism. Those are the themes in our areas. And the cultural resource assessment looks at each one of those and says, is it represented strong in this landscape? Is this weak? And ranks each one. So we collaborate with the local governments when we do our review. We talk to the local planning offices to see what their comments are going to be on these plans, or we talk to the local towns. And if the local government asks us to weigh in strongly, we have weighed in extremely strongly. A few years ago, and Carla's going to talk about this project, the Stories of the Chesapeake Heritage Area went to the Maryland Heritage Area Authority and asked them to use their authority to defeat this project that was in one of our most significant cultural landscapes. All of our review respects local planning efforts, including our local growth areas and our priority preservation areas. We look at landscaping, we look at mitigation, and we are also very lucky in that, at least in a portion of our heritage area, the scenic byway management plan has identified important view sheds. And so if one of these projects is going in an important view shed identified in the scenic byway management plan, we make sure to make a note of that. And that is it. I think if there's any kind of takeaway you can say is that heritage areas are a resource. We are here to help the local governments. We are here to help our partners, and we are here to help strengthen the stewardship of our region. Thank you.
Gail, thank you so much. Our last speaker for the session is Carla Gerber, AICP and CPM. She's the director of Kent County Planning. Planning, Housing, and Zoning, and also serves as vice president of Stories of the Chesapeake Heritage Area. So same heritage area, but speaking from a different perspective.
Thank you, Nell. Are my slides visible? Okay, great.
Yeah.
So as Nell mentioned, I am the director for Kent County Planning and Zoning. We are the northernmost county of the Stories of the Chesapeake Heritage Area, and we're a small rural location, population of about 20,000, and probably 85 to 90% of our land use is in either agricultural production or forest. So that sets the scene a little bit. I'm going to talk from the standpoint. All right, so we there we go. Kind of from the local government side of how we utilize our heritage areas, and sort of the three things I'm going to focus on are going to be how we incorporate the heritage area into our comprehensive plan, project review, and then use them as a resource. So the very first sentence in our comprehensive plan is that it is Kent County's vision to preserve its historic and cultural traditions, along with its high quality of life, while embracing sufficient economic opportunities to provide for the economic well-being of our citizens. And I know that's probably similar to the same sentence that most everybody puts in their comprehensive plan somewhere. But I think it does speak to a lot of what we've already learned today about heritage areas and how they are a tool for encouraging heritage tourism, for stewardship, for preservation. And so I think that ethos really speaks through with our plan. And the heritage area is woven throughout our comprehensive plan. It is mentioned in the section that deals with the relationships to other plans and laws. It is one of the strategies in our economy element is to promote the Stories of the Chesapeake Heritage Area. One of the strategies in our cultural and historic resources element is to recognize the Stories of the Chesapeake Heritage Area Management Plan as a means to further opportunities for heritage tourism and economic development. And so the map that you see on this screen is from our comprehensive plan, and it does not show the heritage area boundary, but it does show that Kent County is full of historic resources, from archaeological sites to historic districts to identified historic sites and homes. So sort of then the next thing that we do, obviously taking from our comprehensive plan, is we have implemented the stewardship and the preservation goals within our zoning regulations. And so our planning commission speaks to multiple uses, incorporate or require project applicants to incorporate historic structures, or they require applicants to demonstrate that uses won't unreasonably interfere with the view of or from sites of historic designated scenic byways, historic structures, those things that are important to us. We have site plan and subdivision regulations that require findings of fact that applicants have made efforts to design projects to complement and enhance the rural historic nature of the county. We have special exceptions that require findings on preservation of cultural and historic landmarks. And so while a lot of those don't necessarily directly reference the heritage area, it is something that we are using, particularly the cultural and scenic assessment that Gail mentioned as part of our review of projects. And we know that we can always reach out to Gail if we need additional information, if we've got something that we really want to make a point about and explore. And since I know everybody is waiting to hear about solar, at least here in Maryland, it's a big issue. And I'm going to talk about two different projects. So one of them is the Mills Branch Solar Project. It was a 60 megawatt facility on 370 acres in the center of some of our prime agricultural land. And the application for its certificate of public convenience and necessity, which is the licensing order that would allow them to construct and operate, was applied for in December of 2015. Our county commissioners intervened in this project. The Keep Kent Scenic organization, which later became Kent Conservation and Preservation Alliance, intervened. Stories of the Chesapeake submitted comments. Most of those focused on the sort of effect that a solar facility of this size would have on our agricultural industry, on our heritage tourism. The testimony reflected the cultural landscape and scenic resource assessment that had been completed. And ultimately, in that case, in January of 2017, the State Public Service Commission denied that application, due in part to that testimony about the effect on the heritage area. Fast forward a couple of years, and we have a second solar facility, the Morgneck Road facility, which was is a 45 megawatt facility on 245 acres. It is adjacent to the county seat of Chestertown, which is our largest town. And that application was submitted in November of 2018. Now, a lot happened between when the Mills Branch application was submitted and when the Morgneck Road application was submitted. There were some significant case law that was established that sort of preempted a lot of the local zoning ability for approving the location of solar facilities. And again, the county commissioners intervened, the Kent Conservation Preservation Alliance intervened. The same testimony was used in that case, but ultimately in that situation, the license was granted and that project is now under construction. However, we've taken the lessons from both of those projects, and we still have 7 smaller projects that are under review at the State Public Service Commission. And our approach to those is to try to collaborate and coordinate with our heritage area by, when we do what's called a pre-application comment letter, we forward that along to Gail so that she can be aware of the application. She can start preparing for how she might want to comment. She can talk with us as to what stand the county might want to take. And I can tell you in pretty much every case, it's going to be that the county commissioners are against these, particularly for the solar facilities that are going into our priority preservation area. But it is still a way for us to work together. And then finally, I'm going to talk a little bit about how as Gail already mentioned, she is there as a resource to provide technical assistance if we need it, to provide support, and for us to collaborate on projects. She was talking about how just in our conversation to prepare for today's webinar, we came up with an idea that we might move forward on doing some of these better models and style guidelines that would support our counties, which have a much better means of reviewing projects down to our little tiny towns. Many of our towns might only have 200 or 300 citizens. They don't have full-time planning staff, and they need the resources that the heritage area provides. So I think that, the thing to keep in mind is that the heritage area is really a flexible tool that provides for stewardship, for preservation, and that it is one of those factors that local governments can consider in their long-range comprehensive planning efforts to both steer development decisions into the right locations and to preserve and protect our communities. So, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Carla. All right. I know we've been answering some of the questions in the Q&A chat. Joe, how would you like to proceed for the remainder of the session in terms of taking and answering questions?
Yeah, I can go through the questions that we have. I think we should be able to get through these. I might even have a couple myself, depending on how much time we have remaining. So if the panel could turn your cameras back on, it'd be great to see everybody's face again. Excellent presentation. And I know, yeah, a couple of questions were answered in the Q&A. So and everybody can see the answers. So if you wanted to go back and look at those, you can. So and if one of these was answered and I missed it because I was monitoring other stuff, just let me know. How are new heritage areas designated?
How are new heritage areas designated? So it is a process that's outlined in our statute and our regulations, and it starts at the local level. An organization or a group of local advocates come together, organize themselves, and then they have to work with the local jurisdiction, because ultimately it's the local jurisdiction that has to put a proposal to the Maryland Heritage Area Authority. And it's a two-step process where there's a period of recognizing and then there's a period of certifying. So I'm happy to provide more details to anyone that wants to call me directly, but that's the general process.
Great. Thank you, Ariane. Could you put if you're okay with it, put in your email in the chat, just because it'll take me as I mentioned earlier, it'll take us a little while to post-process the presentations for accessibility. So
sure.
I didn't share it earlier, but thank you. Okay, so that one's answered. There's a couple questions. There was one in the Q&A and one in the chat about Indigenous peoples' history, and what specifically a question: how could Native American history be more included in these heritage areas? Is there collaboration with existing tribes still in Maryland or which have roots in Maryland?
Well, in the Southern Maryland Heritage Area, there's a strong collaboration, and that heritage area has a recognized tribe. Within the stories of the Chesapeake, we do not have any recognized tribes within our heritage areas. We would very much like to collaborate with Indigenous people, and in our themes, the peopling of the land includes Indigenous people. And we have been working a little bit with the Nanacoke tribe, and we know we have tremendous Native and Indigenous people history, given that John Smith's meeting with the Taquas actually occurred within our heritage area. But the tribes who were here, none of them are recognized at this point.
And I'll just add to that each of the heritage areas, as Gail was just illustrating, has different tribes or nations to be represented, in each of their areas. And they have made great inroads and efforts to build relationships with those tribes. And you'll see that come through in the projects that we fund. We definitely have more relationship building work and, more support that we could be doing. We do have on our authority Chief Donna Abbott with the HCWHA Band of Indians. So getting some good input from her on how to further connect with these tribes and be able to really hear more about what their heritage needs are and how the program, can support them.
I just want to add, for those of you who are not in Maryland, Maryland does not have any federally recognized tribes who are living in their ancestral lands here in the state. We do have connections with federally recognized tribes who did inhabit Maryland as part of their history. But we have state recognized tribes, the Piscataway Indian Nation, the Piscataway Conoy tribe, and the Accohannock Indian tribe. But we also have many, many indigenous communities and tribal organizations throughout the state that the heritage areas also work with. So it's a complex system of tribal communities that is a little bit different from what you might find in some other states. But we do have a number of partnerships, and maybe that's a topic for another session.
I think it might be, because there's a lot of conversation going on in the chat about this right now. So I encourage everybody to read the chat and share. The chat's a great place to enrich the learning here, because we have a lot of well-informed people joining us as well. So I encourage you to read the chat. Thank you. The next one is almost like a case study for you all to ponder, I guess. So would a suburban area that has over 1,200 Yoshino cherry trees within a 2-mile radius be considered a scenic resource? The site rivals the tidal basin and natural resource with similar history, and receives over 20,000 tourists when trees are in bloom. It has never been assessed historically.
That's a very fun case story to ponder. It's just based on that little bit of information. It sounds like there is enough to be able to, explore further what's the heritage of that site, what's the community use, the fact that it attracts visitors, that has the heritage tourism component. As I shared in my presentation, our core areas of focus are that heritage tourism, community enhancement, and sustainability. So if a resource can touch on those, then there's probably a good case to be made.
There may also be other kinds of designation programs locally, if you work with your local jurisdiction to see if there's some other kind of designation and incentive program that might be appropriate for those trees. It sounds pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. There's a question about this, probably mostly directed to Carla, but anybody can answer. So how is the heritage area, or maybe not just heritage areas, just in general, how do you balance the need for renewable energy to address climate change and the need for preservation? It's probably something you're always asking yourself and haven't settled on an answer yet. But what are you thinking?
That is a very tough question. And I think it's one where we've got probably 7 or 8 smaller 5-megawatt or so size facilities that are currently under review, and they're scattered throughout the county. And I think our biggest concern with the solar facilities is it kind of chipping away each little bit, and is it sort of that 1,000 cuts that ultimately will have a negative effect. And I think the way, you approach it is to try to put them in the locations that you've either zoned for it. I'd love to see more solar being done on brownfield or on parking lots. It's very easy to develop the green spaces and the green fields, and I wish there'd be more effort put on some of those harder to develop locations where you could probably have greater benefit and serve the people who are actually in those communities. I don't know if Gail wants to add anything.
I think you hit on the topic. That's part of why there's always a discussion of where is the best option and looking at the best practices from across not only our country, but other countries to see how they're dealing with renewable energy. And does it always have to go on green fields? Can there be a more creative option? And could our heritage area be the model for having the more creative option?
Thank you both.
I'll just add, since it's related, one of the reasons why sustainability was added as one of our, 3 legs to the stool of our focus areas was to provide some more space to address climate adaptation and the needs of historic resources. So things like hazard mitigation, addressing sea level rise, protecting, buildings and, other cultural landscapes are things that would be eligible for funding, through our grant program, as long as they still have that public access component and are tied to, the tourism initiatives.
Thank you. Let's see. Here's another question. There are monthly heritage month. All right. There are heritage months that many departments and municipalities celebrate. Do the heritage areas program around these? Do you work with these, especially when local events are happening?
Gail, do you want to speak to that from your heritage area? I know that a lot of the heritage areas do try and do a tie-in. I don't know if you have any examples that you want to lift up.
Yes, we definitely try to do a tie-in. I guess the most recent tie-in will be with the planting of the Liberty trees in Talbot County to coincide at the Frederick Douglass Park on the Tuckahoe to coincide with Underground Railroad Month. We also, when we send out our newsletter of kind of things to do in the area, we try to coordinate that with whatever the preservation theme might be for that month. And we participate in a lot of the different festivals and support festivals with small grants if they're adding something new to the festival.
Great. Thank you. Gail, the next question for you, I think it's more of a clarification question. So it's about the advocating. This is for the PPRP review under the cultural assessment for advocating dividing the scenic area and asking residents and tourists to prioritize as part of that cultural assessment. Can you give a little more on that, please?
Certainly. We hired consultants so that we would have the outside view. Those consultants looked at the landscape and divided our heritage area into 24 different districts according to biology, elevation, and landscape. As a part of the study, when we were taking out and talking about forming our heritage area, we had a survey that actually asked the preferences for visitors and surveys. What are your favorite views when you come to our heritage area? What's your favorite thing to do in our heritage area? What's your place of the heart that's so important to you? And that information was then included into that preference section of the review.
Thank you. The next question is about heritage corridors and how they differ from heritage areas, or if they do.
Our corridors, I'm not sure if the question is connected to a designation or just like the general sense of a corridor. A corridor, if Korean Way in Howard County. Okay. I'd have to look into that one specifically. But without knowing more, I would say there's the potential for them to be included in a heritage area. I think it depends on how they're defined. Some of the heritage areas were initially built around waterways and other types of, resource corridors was a way for them to kind of start building out the heritage area. So it wouldn't be at all unusual for those corridors to be included in the geographic boundaries. But if you have a specific one, like the one you asked about, I'd have to look into it to be able to tell you for sure.
Great, thank you. I'm trying to scan. A lot of chat has come in recently, so people are very interested in the topic. Last one I have here, it's not really a question, but it was for the inquirer about the cherry trees. Someone recommended there's a cherry blossom festival in Macon, Georgia, that they may want to look into. I know here in Maryland we're all familiar with one in DC, but if you're looking for another example, they could potentially look at that. I'm trying to see if there's any other questions I need. Okay. Looks like here's a long question. We'll probably take the rest of the time. The one that just came in. What do you do when there are subsets of the community that don't want to see tourism in their communities? How do you balance place-based tourism with the infrastructural demands of increased traffic? Have you seen instances of problems arising from a lack of infrastructure to support newly designated heritage planning areas, or is that preempted? So there's a lot in that question, and we can close with that one today. Any thoughts?
I'll just say from the heart of the Civil War heritage area, there is a lot of, we already have our tourism, county by county tourism folks who are always working to encourage people to explore our counties. And the heritage area is more geared towards lifting up the resources that we already have and trying to encourage folks to explore those and to encourage those partner resources to enhance their visitor services and things like that. It's less about creating new tourist attractions for us, and more of trying to get the good word out about what's happening in our heritage area and improving visitor access and accessibility to those places.
Great. Thank you.
I will just add to that that I think, to Daphne's point, it's often that those resources are already there. And the other overlay is that there are other state designation incentive programs, such as the arts and entertainment districts and Main Street, that there's a lot of overlap with the heritage areas. So that often helps to ensure that that infrastructure is in place. And also it's a great cross collaboration between state initiatives to really try and, lift all of those resources up, make sure that they're accessible, and see each of those programs thrive and support, kind of each other in a very cohesive way.
Go ahead.
Just kind of shortly, both when we're working with our byways and with the heritage area, this has come up in some of our communities. And part of the heritage area and the byways, the advantage of that is being able to distribute this tourism across a wide variety of resources. So they're not just going to the one community that feels like they're over touristed. Now there's other options available, and we're able to show what other options are available, and it lifts all boats. We've also been very supportive of project grants that come in that deal with some of the infrastructure needs that's created through tourism, such as the all-important bathrooms.
To say, we support bathrooms, we support parking lots, things to make it all possible for people to get there and be comfortable when they arrive.
I think the importance of bathrooms is a great place to wrap up. We got to the most important point. I want to thank everybody for attending. We will be sharing the presentation and the recording as they're available. I do stress we're getting better at the post accessibility stuff, but we're not quite there yet. But we will be posting it, recordings as soon as we can, and sharing the presentations. So, Nell, did you want to say anything? And say thank you to the panel.
Thank you all for presenting. Thank you for joining us today on the webinar. It's so exciting to see people from all over the country and even from different countries. So I hope this was informative, and we look forward to doing a follow-up at some point.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody.